This is Hero of Sparta, or more accurately, Hero the Conqueror. Under his father's guidance, Hero has been able to reunite Greece back into Greek hands. The pitiful Greek rebels stood no chance against him and his might. Now it was time for the true test of strength. Hero could not wait to spill Roman blood. With money now lining our pockets, it was time to go on a shopping spree, starting with the second most important member of our force, Polydorus. The admiral was finally given a date for when he would have his fleet restored. The man grinned and sipped from his unseasonal cocktail and watched the ocean waves, silently praising Poseidon. For everywhere else, it was finally time to buy the essentials for each settlement. Start with Kydonia, we buy a fence, and in Termon we recruit some peasants, but quickly change our mind for a spy. It would be nice to see what the enemy was doing for once. And now it was time for the religious buildings. Gods, there were so many to choose from. There was Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom, two facets that would surely help our campaign. Or Aphrodite, her grace and beauty would surely beguile the peoples, keeping their worries at bay. How about Hermes, the messenger and patron of trade and travel? That would surely boost the economy, and we do intend to travel the world. Was Nike the one to go with? The winged goddess of victory would certainly bless our campaign with many victories. It was down to Aphrodite and Nike. Aphrodite gave an extra 1.5% growth rate at the expense of 2 bonus experience. Or do we sacrifice that growth in return for better troops? In the end, Nike was most certainly living up to her personification and was victorious. Shrines to our chosen goddess are built in almost all of our cities, quickly draining our newly gained funds. In the meantime, the Julii party ship from Athens has finally arrived by Apollonia. Hero quickly sends them home. Polydorus considers finishing the Roman fleet off, but decides that it's best waiting for next year. With a rejuvenated spirit, the old admiral takes on the Julii fleet and sinks them, and goes back on his good old Roman patrol. To the north, the Thracian fort has been disbanded. How troubling. The new year seems to bring a new lease of life to the faction. With money rolling into the treasury, the people's morale was boosted, making them the most productive people in the world. And with the new shrines complete, we can work on the people being the happiest in the world. The new year also brings a new development in the Eastern diplomacy. The Seleucids have certainly had an interesting 6 months, seeing as they have become a protectorate under Egypt while also breaking their alliance with them and seemingly getting themselves stuck in a web of alliances against them. It really didn't surprise Polydorus at this point when he spotted yet another Brutii bireme that was filled with troops, though a question did pop into his mind: where had these troops come from? Surely with their 2 towns, the Brutii hadn't already replaced their army, especially with Polydorus sinking their transport fleets as quickly as they appeared. Never mind though, they will sink to the bottom of the ocean like the rest. From Termon we send our freshly made spy, the first of his kind, up to the north to eventually scout out the next rebel settlement. With money once again back in our pockets, we can commence the next round of essential building. Apollonia is too small to gain anything, and Termon gains some sewers and another spy in training. Larissa has a shrine to Nike queued, and Athens commissions a port. Thessalonica decides on a trader to try and increase trade profits. Teleus, following his adopted brother's lead, also builds a trader in Bylazora. Kydonia, being a hub of dye and iron, builds a shrine to Hermes to increase the trade of its items. Finally, Sparta orders for sewers to be built, depleting the remaining gold. Cleomenes also orders for a unit of peasants to be trained up. The winter of 258 BC arrives. Along with it is the Brutii fleet that is most certainly too close to Apollonia for its own good. As Cleomenes looked over the financial report, he was moderately surprised to see that they had generated a negative profit. Though with the amount of recruiting and building that's been happening, it shouldn't be that surprising. And oh look, the Egyptians are now at war with the Seleucids too! Polydorus swiftly takes care of the Brutii fleet, sending them retreating back to Croton, and Polydorus, doing the only thing that he ever seems to do, follows behind shortly.
Yes, sir! Out of move, sir! Ramming speed!
The second spy from Termon starts his journey to Thracian lands, and our first spy, Telemacho, discovers that Salona has been captured by a rather sizable Gaul force. Ready to move on, Hero leaves Apollonia, hiring a unit of Cretans to take care of the town in his absence.
Sir, splitting the troops. Yes.
Hero marches towards the new Greek-Gaul border and places down a watchtower. He trusted his new neighbours as far as he could throw them. He moves back south, picking up the spy on the way, and was eagerly awaiting the ship to take him to Italy. In Bylazora, following the lead of the faction heir, Teleus leaves the city to set up his own watchtowers. He unexpectedly came face to face with the large Thracian army that had, to that point, only been rumours on the wind. With no money left, he couldn't even hire mercenaries to guard him if the Thracians went hostile. He beat a hasty retreat, using the last of the faction's funds to lay down a watchtower as he left. That was too close. The summer of 257 BC graces us with its presence, and nothing much of note occurred. The Thracian army was, thankfully, still where Teleus had bumped into it. He would get to return home this time. With the traders and port now built, trade as well as profits should hopefully start picking up now. Polydorus continues his war against the Brutii fleet, grumbling the entire time. This is not what he imagined his life would be when he signed up for the navy in his youth. Of course he won. What kind of 4-star admiral would he be if he didn't? Once more, he chases. Hero's transportation fleet waiting in Termon rushes in and sends the Romans north, not realising that the Brutii were stuck where they were and Polydorus could have taken care of them in the winter. In light of the recent alliance with Thrace, Teleus had ordered the training of a diplomat and had sent him on a mission of peace. Reaching the Dacian capital, Iolaos offers for an alliance, only to be, in his opinion, quite rudely turned down. Eucylides, having spent more time in Europe than his home country, finally makes it to Spain. He was able to successfully complete his job as a diplomat and trade both trade rights and map information. Much like Roach's pirates appeared once more, refusing to stay down. Polydorus destroys the pirate fleet and is quickly attacked by another. Poseidon, it appeared, did not give out favours for free, and it was time for Polydorus to return to the sea. It was now down to Admiral Dion to take on the mantle that Polydorus left behind. The chase would now be his. Dion sails to the Brutii fleet and sinks it in honour of the legendary admiral and his old mentor. As one life leaves the world, two more join. Progress was going well in upgrading the settlements, and the Gaul and Dacia have formed an alliance. That could be concerning. Another fleet had been built in Termon once it was clear that Admiral Dion had changed priorities, and it was ready to take Hero to Italy.
Yes, sir.
And just like that, the Roman invasion could now begin. The Roman capital appeared to be rather poorly defended, though most of their force did lie at the bottom of the ocean. 2 generals, 2 units of heavy infantry, 2 velites and a unit of cavalry auxilia were all that stood between Hero and that capital. Having made the journey across early in the season, Hero still had time to make it to the Roman city and put it under siege, showing the Romans the way of the 3 rams. Back in Spain, Eucylides starts making his way home, stopping by the Gaul to ask if they wanted to be friends. They said no, and Eucylides was sad. The spy from Termon finally makes it to Bylazora. The rebels have moved. Hipparinos continues north, spotting the Thracian army that still hasn't moved. Money is good, buildings are being built, and not even Athena knows what is happening between the Seleucids and Egypt. Are they at war? Are they friends? Who knows? We don't, and by the seams of it, neither do they. Is it the Armenians that are causing this trouble? Onias of Corinth moved from Athens to the newly made capital, Larissa, seeing as it was in the middle of the empire. Larissa and Bylazora both produced militia cavalry, and Thessalonica was pumping out armoured hoplites, sending them north to Bylazora ready for when, not if, the Thracians attacked.
Sir! Sir! Onward! Onward!
We can worry about that later though, as now we take the fight to the Romans. The rams were ready and Hero was too. Hero had the advantage 10-1, especially being that the main bulk of the Brutiides' army would be arriving later, if at all, let alone that the city was so poorly defended. Oppius Brutus, the faction heir, a mere 17 years old. Hero remembers when he was that age. He had already conquered 2 cities and was on his 3rd by his 17th birthday. What threat would this mewling pup be? The boy couldn't even inspire his troops properly. At least his supporting general had a marginally better grasp at commanding.
Today, we look for a victory worthy of Hercules himself. This is a mighty task, but we are men enough to do it! There is no shame in being scared, but fear should never be your master. Now cheer, you children of Zeus, and sound the advance!
Hero's speeches have come a long way since his mumblings about breakfast. But if anyone was to feel fear, it would be the Romans that we now faced. The priority of this assault was to get into the city before the reinforcements, sending the ram and archers into action immediately. While the Principes were heavily armoured, it didn't stop the hail of arrows from piercing the metal plates that protected them. Far on the other side of the city, Manius Paterculus was pushing and rushing his men to the city. The light cavalry were the first to make it inside the capital's walls, the general and infantry miles behind. Both armies reached their respective gates at the same time. With the last of the Principe falling to the archers, the gates come open.
Our soldiers have done their work well. The battering ram has broken through the gates.
Spartans poured into the city, and on the other side of the city, the Brutii infantry did the same. It would now be a race to defend the plaza. With the Spartans in and defending both directions, the Cretans could now enter. Now for the march to the plaza. Unfortunately, the Romans won this race, but their victory would be for naught. Their soldiers would be exhausted and no doubt demoralised as they gathered their breath. The cavalry auxilia were the first to meet the Spartans, throwing their ineffective spears at the Greeks. The cavalry failed to pull back in time and are dragged into hand-to-hand combat with the spearmen. The lightly armoured horsemen had no hope against the highly trained hoplites, melting away as they came into contact with the Spartans. The Cretans were now positioned to be in range of the plaza, and started taking down the Roman ranged infantry. The cavalry auxilia broke, but seeing the reinforcements holding out on the plaza, revitalised their spirit and they charged back in. Coming into contact with the Spartans once more, they broke just as quickly. There were plenty more Romans to go through, and the archers were doing a wonderful job at thinning the numbers down. Up next was Unit or 2 of exhausted Hastarte. The light infantry was quick to run into the ends of the Spartan spears, swiftly falling under the Greeks. Amidst the chaos, the cavalry auxilia tried to be helpful, but once more broke, demoralising their surrounding comrades further. Some of the Spartans had abandoned their spears into the streets, instead using their short swords. The Roman general finally decided to grace us with his presence. Eager and fresh, the horsemen pushed through their exhausted troops, forcing their way to the front, with Oppius Brutus taking the lead. The Spartans were proving not to be infallible. The constant push from the cavalry and infantry was starting to take their toll on the elites. Seeing the Spartans fall, Oppius was feeling confident enough to take this fight into his own hands. Dodging and weaving his mount around the spears and swords with finesse, the young heir landed several good hits on the Spartans. Oppius takes a few blows himself. The gashes, cuts, stabs and bruises soon became too much for the boy, and he succumbed to his wounds. Seeing the death of their leader, the exhausted infantry lost hope and ran. Manius Paterculus, not realising how close the Spartans had gotten, rushed around the city corners and ended up impaling himself upon the spears. All that was left were panicking stragglers, a majority of them being exhausted velites. And with one tired unit of Principe, it wasn't looking good for the Romans. Both groups of Spartan advanced into the city centre. The overwhelming number of javelins flying through the air were able to get past the Spartans' defences, piercing through their heavy robes. While the young men were easy to cut down, they were most certainly not going down without a fight as the Spartans approached. With the Principe finally taken town, all that was left was to mop up the scattered missile troops. Hoping to prove that he is indeed worthy of his titles, Hero comes charging in at the end. Leading the assault, he valiantly took on the Principe flag bearer, with some assistance from the rest of his bodyguard. Now all remained was 6 Veletae. However, the 6 men were quick to surrender, and deciding that his men had suffered enough during this battle, Hero accepted. Hero had lost 2% of his force in this attack. 38 of his Spartans lay upon these Roman streets to never return to Greece. Hero prayed to the gods that further battles against the Romans would not result in a loss like this. Settling into the city, Hero was faced with a tough decision. There was no need to exterminate populations now, but he couldn't just occupy the city either. The Roman people, despite stealing from his own culture, would not accept the Greek way of life without a fight. Perhaps he could teach these people by spreading them across the land. In the process of shipping people from the captured city to Greek settlements, Hero gained a slave trader to his retinue. Hero was reluctant to have the man join his party, but the population growth he provided would help rebuild the cities Hero had to cut down. Now only Croton remained in Bruttii hands, and much like the previous capital, lay quite undefended. Hero's spies sent ahead, vying for the opportunity to open the gates for his master. Hero stepped outside the city to see if the public reacted if he left, and much like children, the people of Tarentum were not ready to be left alone. Hero returns from his trip and reconsiders his plan for moving on. He needed to get these people happy, and fast. Back in Croton, Telemacho has done some digging on the Roman leader. Vibius Brutus appeared to be a bit of a mess of a man, an irritable, extravagant leader, yet intelligent. Some days he would excel in managing, and yet on others he would fumble around his words, tossing coin at everything. At the very least, Vibius had a year to prepare. As Teleos was looking over the papers of a promising young man, he hears a crashing in the distance, and a messenger came running through his chamber doors. And look who it was breaking the newly forged alliance. The news that the Gaul was spotted near Apollonia didn't surprise him much either. Going back to his papers, Lycas was a promising young man, and Teleos would most certainly be happy to take the man under his wing and see him grow into a fine Greek general. The messenger from before placed several more stacks of papers onto Teleos' desk. Among them were the official declarations of the Thracians' betrayal and subsequent besiegement of Bylazora. He was thankful that they had been preparing for this moment. It was sooner than expected, but at least they weren't caught completely unaware. More troubling news came in the form of a sickly disease spreading through the streets. This was probably the doings of those barbaric Thracians too. Well, if the Thracians liked their plague so much, he would send it back to them. Recalling the spy from the north, Teleos has him stay in the city slums, almost guaranteeing that the spy would get sick. He promised him a handsome reward if he survived the mission. From Corinth, a newly trained diplomat leaves from Athens to explore the east, make friends, and maybe even discover what was happening between the Seleucids and the Egyptians. Back in Italy, with the approaching Gaul army, a decision had to be made. It would take too much time for another army to make it to Apollonia, and so Hero made the tough decision to abandon Tarentum and stop the Gaul from gaining a foothold in Greece. The armoured hoplites left behind tried to placate the people as much as they could, but there was no hope. Recruiting 2,160 members of the public into the army hardly made a dent in their attitude. The unrest and cultural differences were just too great. Before leaving the shore, Hero gave one last command. Burn it all to the ground and get as much money as you could out of them. If the plebs want to rebel, ensure they have no equipment or training. If the Romans take it back, make them spend their own hard-earned money to restore the city. We can return later. But in the meantime, give them hell. One by one, each military building fell. The stables, the well-built legion barracks, the port, the practice range, even the trader and the smithy were torn down. The shrine to Athena was left alone, of course. No idiot would wish Athena's retribution upon themselves, let alone intentionally ask for it. The city, of course, was rather unhappy, though there wasn't really much that could be done about that. The armoured hoplites, having completed their orders, left the city, awaiting the ships to come back and collect them. The year comes to an end and Hero's transport gets attacked by pirates. Losing the battle, Admiral Dion is chased south, causing a massive delay in getting Hero to Apollonia. Though one must be thankful for the small victories, as Admiral Dion informs the faction heir that he can get his army to the city this season. Disembarking from the ship, Hero is greeted by the foul stench of those barbarian scum. Speaking of barbarian scum, it truly wasn't unexpected that the Dacians had been sticking their filthy noses where they don't belong. In other news, more interesting diplomacy has occurred. In the ongoing adventure of the Seleucid Empire, they are once more at war with Armenia, again, and are protectorates under Egypt, again. More troubling is the fact that the Gaul and Brutii have allied themselves, because of course they would. Back to our diplomat in Italy, Seleucids would try to barter with the Julii once more. Approaching the coastal town, he requested an audience with the highest in command. He did not expect to see the Julii leader. Stealing himself, the diplomat offers a ceasefire and a very generous payment. The Julii leader rudely rejects his offer. Seleucids tries again with the Scipii diplomat stood next to him, offering a ceasefire, the rioting city of Tarentum, and 5,000 denarii. Despite the assurances that Tarentum was an otherwise fine city, the Scipii also declined. Bastards. To the east, Proetus was having a much easier time. Finding a Pontus captain, he gained trade rights and exchanged map information. The view of the east was becoming a little clearer. Loaded with little particles of death, Hipparinos began his mission. Making his way to the Thracian siege camp, he slipped into the camp and mingled with the soldiers, keeping an eye out for the general. While he was able to find out some interesting things about the man, he never saw him and his chance had passed. If he couldn't attack the individuals, he could at least take down the towns. The Dacian capital would be the first to feel his wrath. Newly adopted Lycas had his first mission. The spy had reported that the Thracians had rams prepared, and were no doubt going to attack any day now. The new general needed to get to Bylazor as quickly as possible, picking up any men, no matter the cost, along the way. While they weren't the best troops, the mercenaries would do. A unit of armoured hoplites followed behind shortly, bringing with them letters of encouragement from Thessalonica. Lycas sets up camp outside the city, waiting for the battle call. Of course, Tarentum would rebel and return itself back to the Brutii instead of independence. No matter, perhaps leaving Italy was meant to be if the sizable Scipii army was anything to go by. In the meantime, we had more pressing matters to attend to. It was time for Teleus and Lycas to prove their worth.